Welcome back to Max Easy Lessons. This is Julie Tagg, also author of Think and Write for CSEC English A and B. That's the webpage. The link is at the end of the video and it will be in the description box as well. So what I'm doing today is a little bit different. It's a unit plan. It's just possible suggestions on how you could do the short stories for CSEC. The full PDF file will be available on the Think and Write for CSEC English A and B. So all you need to do is to go to Google, type in that long thing there, Think and Write for CSEC English A and B, and it will direct you to the web page. So let's go ahead. First, in that first week of teaching the short stories, you want to define the short story. Oh, and before I even go there is no set time of the year that you want to teach the short story. It all depends on you as the teacher and the abilities of your students. You may want to teach the short stories at the start of the school year, or you may want to do them after you have done the play or the novel, or whichever way it is. Whichever time you choose to do it, that's okay. And this is why I have week 1 and no possible or no suggestive date in which to start the short story. So let's get into the first week of teaching the short stories. You want to define a short story. And if you are thinking, all right, why do I need to define a short story? Everybody knows what it is. Not necessarily so. You see, there's a difference between the short story and the novel. And when you get straight into it, you want to define it at the get-go. You want to make sure that students are aware that the short story has different features from the novel. Yes, they are similar, but they are also different. You want to also look at the basic elements of the prose fiction in terms of the plot, the characterization, the themes, the point of view, and the conflict. You also want to give a diagnostic test, be it at the start of week 1 lesson, where even before you get into anything with the students, or after you have given them a refresher's course on the elements of prose fiction and what's a short story. You may want to give that diagnostic test afterwards just to ensure that you are all on the same page in terms of what the short story is and what it entails. In the second week, you want to take one of those short stories. I have chosen for week 2, The Boy Who Loved Ice Cream by Olive Sr. Now, when you're teaching the short stories, and what I found interesting when I taught it was that students become more cognizant of the events in the story if they can connect it to who that writer is, who that author is. So in this case, we do Olive Sr. A student will be better able to understand the context of the story because they know who Olive Sr. is, where she was from, and what were her ideals. So at the start of week 2, right before you start reading that short story, I would suggest that you look at the author's biography, a little bit touching to the history of the author. You may also want to assess the context in which the story is written. And when I say assess the context, I'm talking about discussing the historical, the social, and the cultural context in which that story is written. It's an interesting one too. The Boy Who Loved Ice Cream, and many Caribbean students are going to be able to relate to it if they understand all where this is coming from. Then you want to go into the themes of the short story. That is, after you have read the short story with the students, you would want to discuss the themes of the short stories. You will look at obsession and paranoia. You will also look at poverty. You will look at the tension involving rural life, the childhood experiences, adulthood, desires, and dreams. And in that week, you also want to talk about the elements and techniques used in the short story, which would be characterization, which would be pathetic fallacy in this one, juxtaposition, narrative point of view, irony, and symbolism. Now, mind you, I may have left off some that you believe are present in the short story. It doesn't mean that they are not. It doesn't mean that you cannot discuss it as well with your students. Whatever else you find that is relevant to your short story, go ahead, because this is just your guide. Now, you also in that week 2, and some people may say, oh, that's too much work to do all of this in week 2 only. But you want to start introducing that essay at the get-go, from the beginning, from day 1, you want to start it. And you don't want to teach the literary analysis essay in isolation. You want to teach it as you teach the short story. Now, you're not going to give them a comparative essay. to write in this second week, but you will give them something that is more than an answer for A and B, a multiple choice then. You want to give them something where they have to think about what they have read and they want to write about what they have read. So in this essay, you want to do the introduction with the students. You want to ensure that students understand that, yes, they do essay writing for English A, but they will also do essay writing for English B. Not that they are different, because all essays have the three main parts of it: the introduction, the body, and the conclusion. But you want them to also understand that for the literary essay, it's more of a critical analysis of the short story than it is about just writing facts. So you would want to introduce the essay writing here. You want to talk about the introduction and discuss how to create that hook, how to build that thesis sentence for that literary essay. And I keep stressing literary essay because the literary essay's thesis statement is a little bit more tricky than those that you write for the argumentative essay and the persuasive essay. You also want to talk about the body of this essay, because you're going to need to have that topic sentence. You're going to want them to understand the transitional words and phrases and how to move from one point to the other point. You also want to ensure that they are using direct and indirect quotations to support their main ideas, and to ensure that these quotations that they're using are concrete as well as relevant. You can't just throw an quotation there because it looks good on the paper. It has to be relevant. It has to be concrete. And also, one of the things that I found when I was doing the short stories was that there is a lack of the concluding sentences, because students no longer feel that they have to tie in everything that was said in that paragraph at the end. Now, it is important that you write that concluding sentence in your body paragraphs, because it makes it easier for you to do that conclusion when you are done with your entire essay. So I said before, I'm going to say it one more time. Not a scratch record here, but I'm going to say it one more time. The literary analysis essay for the short stories and the poetry are a little bit different from writing those argumentative and persuasive essays for English A. So you want to do that at the week 2 level, where students are ready and set to learn the short stories, and also where they are able to understand that this is a different form of writing for the essay than it is for English A and B. Now, at the end of week 2, and if you wanted to stretch this lesson into week 3, that is okay too, because it all depends on how quickly your students will grasp the concept, and you don't want to rush it because you think that, oh, I have to do this within a specific time. Different students learn at different pace, different students learn at different level, and if you have to tailor your lessons to accommodate your students, then that is okay too. So you want to give a very simple essay, a draft essay on the boy who loved ice cream. You don't want it to be a comparative question because you have only done one short story, but you also want your students to understand what it is to write one of these essays. And so here is a sample question that is from my book that is available on Amazon. I do have literature books there on Amazon under the name of Julie Tag, which gives you sample questions that your students can practice for CSEC for English A and for English B. All right, so the theme of poverty is common in the short story. Discuss the way that poverty shapes the events that impact the little boy in the story. Now, of course, I didn't have it that simple. It was connected to a comparative question, but that is one sample that you could have your students write at this point, which would be interesting. It's not technical, it's not difficult, but it will also ensure that they write thesis statement, they have their hook, that is that sentence or two that will have the reader wanting to read more. And then you will also have them do their body paragraphs and their conclusion as well. So at the end of all of this talking, I do have sample material on Amazon. Those are questions that will help you to practice with your students for CSEC. I also have Think and Write for CSEC English A and B on Google, on the web. You can go ahead and find those, find whatever additional material you need from other sources. And thank you again for stopping in. Thank you for sticking around.